Well, hello there, and welcome to yet another thrilling episode of What Fresh Hell has Congress cooked up now. Today, my friends, we have a doozy. Just last week, as the magnolias bloomed and we all collectively tried to forget about last year's cicada invasion, the House of Representatives, in a nail-biter of a vote that probably involved more arm-twisting than a chiropractic convention, passed a brand new bill. Yes, another one. This legislative masterpiece, a cornerstone of President Trump's much-vaunted second-term agenda, squeaked through by the narrowest of margins. It's now winging its way over to the Senate, where, let's be honest, bills often go to either get a spa day or die a slow, painful death by filibuster. This isn't just some minor tweak to the official bird of a lesser-known state. Oh no, this bill is big. We're talking could reshape your financial landscape big. It's like one of those oversized novelty checks, except this one might actually cash, or, depending on your perspective, bounce spectacularly, taking a few of your life plans with it. The proposed changes are sweeping, touching everything from the taxes you pay, or perhaps don't pay if you're incredibly wealthy, spoiler alert, to how your kids might save for college, assuming college is still a thing and not replaced by TikTok tutorials for brain surgery. We're talking about a legislative behemoth that promises significant shifts. And you, dear viewer, are right in its path. The passage of this bill through the House, even by a whisker, signals a clear intent from the current administration. It's a statement piece like a neon green tuxedo at a funeral. You can't ignore it, and it definitely says the implications are vast, potentially affecting your paycheck, your retirement plans, the social safety nets we all sort of rely on, and even how the country spends your money on a grand scale. So buckle up, buttercups, because we're about to dive headfirst into the murky waters of this new legislation. It's going to be a wild ride filled with jargon we'll try to detangle and consequences that could be felt for years to come. And why should you care? Well, aside from the fact that it's your country and your money, this bill is a perfect example of how decisions made in the marbled halls of Washington can ripple out and touch the most ordinary parts of our lives. From the cost of your gym membership, yes, really, to the future of programs that millions depend upon, this legislation is poised to stir the pot. So grab a beverage, preferably a strong one, because we're going to unpack this thing piece by piece, trying to make sense of the promises, the pitfalls, and the sheer unadulterated audacity of it all. Let's begin, shall we? All right, let's talk taxes, everyone's favorite topic, right after surprise root canals. The centerpiece of this new bill, the glittering jewel in its legislative crown, is a hefty serving of tax changes. First up, those tax cuts from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, you know, the ones that were set to expire like a carton of milk left out in the sun. Well, this bill wants to hit the snooze button on that expiration date, extending them to the tune of multi-trillion-dollar tax breaks. Yes, trillion with a T, as in that's a terrific amount of money, not going into government coffers or perhaps totally targeted towards certain people. It's a big extension, folks. Now, the bill doesn't just stop at extending old cuts, it also introduces new rate reductions across all income groups. On the surface, that sounds lovely, doesn't it? Like a party where everyone gets a slice of cake. But as with most parties thrown by politicians, you have to look closely at who's getting the corner piece with extra frosting. While everyone technically sees some reduction, the lion's share of the benefits, the really juicy, marbled steak of tax relief, is reportedly heading straight to the top 5% of income earners. So while your average Joe might get a slightly larger crouton, the folks already dining on caviar are getting an extra dollop, or perhaps the entire sturgeon. One particularly interesting omission, or perhaps a glaringly obvious one, depending on your cynicism levels, is the absence of a millionaire tax. Despite some of President Trump's own allies, like the ever-quotable Stephen K. Bannon, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the ultra-wealthy could chip in a bit more, this bill says a resounding nah, they're good. This decision has, predictably, raised a few eyebrows and more than a few voices, accusing the plan of being less trickle-down economics and more gush-upwards opulence. The thinking in Washington seems to be that if the House isn't keen on taxing millionaires more, the Senate will be even less inclined, making such a provision dead on arrival. So, the landscape of who pays what is set for a significant shake-up. The extension of previous cuts means a continuation of a certain fiscal philosophy. one that believes lower taxes, particularly for corporations and high earners, stimulate the economy. The new rate reductions offer a veneer of universal benefit, but the distribution of those benefits is where the real story lies. It's a classic tale of tax policy where the details determine who RSVPs yes to the Prosperity Party and who's left wondering if their invitation got lost in the mail again. This is the part your accountant will either love or dread explaining to you. Now, let's move on to some of the, shall we say, more provisions in this bill. Because it's not all about broad tax rates. Sometimes it's about the quirky little extras designed to make you go, well, that's a choice. First up, get ready for Trump accounts. Yes, you heard that right. The bill proposes creating special savings accounts for every baby born in the US between January 2025 and January 2029. Each of these lucky little tykes will receive a one-time $1,000 federal payment to kickstart their financial future. Imagine your newborn already has $1,000 in the bank, probably more than some adults after a particularly enthusiastic weekend in Vegas. Parents can then lovingly contribute up to $5,000 annually to these Trump accounts. The idea is that these funds will grow, and at age 18, the young adult can tap into them for approved expenses like education, job training, or even a down payment on a home. If they manage to resist the siren call of youthful frivolity, any remaining funds become fully accessible at age 30, presumably for more sensible adult things like a slightly larger down payment or a lifetime supply of artisanal avocado toast. It's an interesting concept, aiming to give kids a financial leg up, though one wonders about the logistics and the long-term impact on, say, national debt. But wait, there's more. Because this bill isn't just about securing the financial future of our infants, it's also deeply concerned with your physical fitness, or at least making it tax-deductible. The legislation proposes allowing sports and fitness expenses to be paid tax-free through health savings accounts, the HSAs. So that gym membership you swear you'll use more often, or those Zumba classes that leave you looking like a startled flamingo, you could potentially get a tax break for them. Individuals can spend up to $500 annually on these fitness pursuits. And for married couples, that figure doubles to a cool $1,000. Think of it, tax-advantaged treadmills, deductible dumbbells, fiscally friendly fitness. It's a novel way to incentivize healthy living, or perhaps just a way to make those expensive boutique fitness classes feel slightly less ruinous to your bank account. One can almost picture the ads now. Get ripped and reduce your taxable income. It's certainly a creative use of the tax code, aiming to blend personal wellness with personal finance. Whether it leads to a healthier nation or just more complicated tax returns remains to be seen, but it's definitely a conversation starter at your next spin class. All right. Shifting gears from babies and biceps, let's talk about money leaving the country, specifically money sent by foreign workers back to their families abroad. This bill introduces a new player to the tax game, a 3.5% tax on remittances. Now, for those unfamiliar, remittances are basically when someone working in one country sends a portion of their earnings to support loved ones in their home country. It's a massive flow of capital globally, often a lifeline for families in developing nations. And now, if this bill becomes law, Uncle Sam wants a small slice of that pie before it leaves the American bakery. It's important to note who this tax targets and who it doesn't. The bill explicitly states that US citizens and US nationals are exempt from this 3.5% levy. So if you're an American citizen sending birthday money to your cousin in, say, Italy, you're in the clear. This tax is specifically aimed at foreign workers residing in the United States who are sending funds internationally. The rationale often floated for such taxes is twofold. Firstly, to generate revenue for the government, and secondly, some argue it might encourage more money to be spent or invested within the US economy itself. The potential impact on foreign workers and their families could be significant. For individuals sending relatively small, hard-earned amounts, that 3.5% can make a real difference to the recipient. Imagine you're sending $200 home. That's $7 less arriving. It might not sound like a fortune, but for families relying on these funds for basic necessities like food, medicine, or education, every dollar counts. This provision is likely to be a point of contention, balancing domestic economic aims against the humanitarian aspect of global financial support networks that many immigrant communities rely upon heavily. This remittance tax is a clear example of how fiscal policy can intersect directly with immigration and international relations. It's a move that could bring in a new stream of revenue, but it also raises questions about fairness and the potential impact on the very people who often fill essential, albeit sometimes lower-paying jobs within the US economy. It's a delicate balancing act, and whether this 3.5% exit fee for money achieves its intended goals without undue hardship on vulnerable populations will be a key area to watch if this bill moves forward. It adds another layer of complexity to the lives of many working to support families across borders. Section 5. Social Security, a special nod to our Purple Heart heroes. Now let's turn our attention to Social Security, that vast and vital program that's a cornerstone of retirement and disability support for millions of Americans. When a big bill like this comes along, people understandably get a little antsy about what it might mean for their Social Security benefits. In this particular piece of legislation, the most prominent change concerning Social Security is quite specific and targeted. It introduces a new income tax credit designed to benefit Purple Heart recipients. This is a very particular group, and the change aims to address a very particular problem they might face. Here's the situation it's trying to fix. Some veterans who have been awarded the Purple Heart for being wounded in combat might also receive Social Security disability benefits. However, if these veterans then find employment, their earnings can sometimes lead to a reduction or loss of those disability benefits. This new provision seeks to compensate for that loss. It does this by providing these Purple Heart recipients with a higher Earned Income Tax Credit, or EITC. Essentially, it's a way to put some money back in their pockets through the tax system, acknowledging their service and the financial hit they might take from working while disabled. It's crucial to understand that based on the summaries of the bill we have, there are no other direct and sweeping changes to the broader Social Security program detailed. This isn't an overhaul of retirement ages or a fundamental shift in how Social Security is funded or benefits are calculated for the general population, at least not in this bill. The focus here is pinpointed, addressing a specific concern for a highly respected group of veterans. This targeted approach can be seen as a positive, addressing a clear inequity, but it also means the larger looming questions about Social Security's long-term solvency remain for another day, another debate, and likely another bill. So, for the vast majority of people relying on or planning for Social Security, this bill doesn't appear to rock the boat too much, at least not directly. The spotlight is on this tax credit for Purple Heart recipients, a gesture of support for those who have sacrificed. It's a reminder that even within enormous pieces of legislation, there can be clauses with very specific human stories behind them. While the broader Social Security system continues to be a subject of ongoing national conversation regarding its future, this particular bill carves out a specific form of financial relief for a deserving segment of our veteran community. Section 6, Medicare and SNAP, the sound of silence for now. All right, let's address the elephants in the room, or at least not explicitly detailed in the initial summaries of this sprawling bill, Medicare and SNAP. For those of you holding your breath, wondering what grand plans President Trump's new bill has for these massive programs, well, you can exhale into a paper bag of mild confusion. Because, as it stands, the information released so far is conspicuously quiet on specific changes to Medicare, the health insurance program primarily for Americans aged 65 and older, and also for some younger people with disabilities. It's a bit like waiting for a punchline that never arrives. Similarly, if you were scanning the headlines for news about the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, what most people still colloquially call food stamps, you'd find a similar void. The current bill summaries don't lay out any detailed alterations or new directives for SNAP, a program that provides crucial food purchasing assistance to millions of low-income individuals and families across the country. This lack of explicit mention doesn't necessarily mean these programs are forever safe from changes, but it does suggest that isn't making them a primary target for overhaul, or at least not in a way that's being trumpeted from the rooftops. Now, this silence can be interpreted in a couple of ways. On one hand, it could be a relief for the millions who depend on Medicare and SNAP in their current forms. No news might be good news, suggesting these vital safety nets are, for the moment, being left largely undisturbed by this specific legislative push. On the other hand, in the world of Washington, D.C., silence can also be unsettling. It might mean that changes are being considered behind closed doors or are planned for separate legislation down the line. Politics, after all, is often about timing and strategy, and sometimes what's said is just as important as what is. The absence of detailed changes to Medicare and SNAP in this bill is significant precisely because these programs are so enormous and so vital. They represent a huge chunk of federal spending and a lifeline for a substantial portion of the population. So while tax cuts and new savings accounts are grabbing the headlines from this bill, the apparent non-event for Medicare and SNAP is in itself noteworthy. It leaves beneficiaries and advocates in a state of watchful waiting, aware that the landscape could always shift with the next legislative proposal or political maneuver. For now, the story is what isn't being told. Section 7. Beyond your paycheck, defense, debt, deportations, and diplomas. So we've waded through tax cuts and peered into the mysterious silence surrounding Medicare and SNAP. But hold on, because this legislative octopus has tentacles reaching into many other cookie jars of national policy. For instance, let's talk about guns and butter, or in this case, guns and, well, more guns. The bill includes a significant increase in the defense budget. Yes, more money for military spending. This is a classic feature in many budget proposals, reflecting ongoing global uncertainties or domestic priorities, depending on who you ask. It means more funding for weaponry, personnel, and all the accoutrements of a modern military. Then there's the national credit card, also known as the debt ceiling. This bill proposes to give it a rather hefty bump, increasing the debt ceiling to a cool $4 trillion. Now, for those of you whose eyes glaze over at the term debt ceiling, think of it as the maximum amount of money the government is allowed to borrow. Raising it doesn't authorize new spending per se, but it allows the government to pay for things Congress has already approved. However, a $4 trillion increase is a substantial figure, signaling that the government anticipates needing a lot more borrowing power to cover its expenses, which, as we'll see, are also set to rise. The bill also allocates a substantial amount of funding for a rather controversial purpose: mass deportations. This provision is sure to ignite passionate debate as it touches on deeply divisive issues of immigration policy, border security, and human rights. The allocation of significant financial resources indicates a serious intent to ramp up enforcement activities related to immigration. This isn't just a policy statement, it's putting taxpayer money behind a specific and often contentious operational goal. The human and societal impacts of such a policy are, of course, immense and far-reaching. And if you thought your student loan situation was complicated enough, well, this bill has some thoughts on that too. It proposes ending the existing income-based student loan repayment programs, which many borrowers rely on to manage their debt based on their earnings. These would be replaced with a new fixed-rate program, the details of which will be crucial. Furthermore, Pell Grant eligibility is set for a tweak. Students would need to take 15 credits per semester instead of the current 12 to qualify for the full grant. This could potentially reduce aid by about $1,500 for students who can't manage the heavier course load, making higher education even more of a financial hurdle for some. Section 8. The critics corner booze, bafflement, and a billionaire's blues. Naturally, a bill this sweeping, this ambitious, this was bound to get people talking, and not everyone is singing its praises from the rooftops. Let's start with a rather high-profile critic, Elon Musk. Yes, the man who wants to put us on Mars and was, for a time, President Trump's cost-cutting czar, a title that sounds like it was invented during a particularly wild game of Mad Libs. Musk, who headed the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, and yes, that's a real acronym they went with, expressed disappointment with the bill. His main beef? It actually the budget deficit rather than shrinking it, which for a cost-cutting czar is presumably like a chef being served a burnt steak. He's reportedly even stepped back from his role at DOGE. President Trump himself, the man whose name is metaphorically stamped all over this agenda, acknowledged having mixed feelings about the bill. That's quite an admission, isn't it? It's like a parent saying their new baby is all right, I guess. However, he did make sure to praise the tax cuts, which are, after all, a signature component. This kind of qualified endorsement from the top suggests that even within the administration and its closest circles, there might be some reservations or awareness of the bill's more controversial aspects, or perhaps just the usual political tightrope walking. A major point of contention, as we touched on earlier, is the decision to extend tax cuts heavily favoring the wealthy, while simultaneously including any form of millionaire tax or other measures to increase contributions from top earners. Critics argue this exacerbates inequality and is fiscally irresponsible, especially given the projected increase in the deficit. This particular aspect has been flagged as a potential hot potato in upcoming elections, as it provides a clear point of differentiation for political opponents who will likely paint the bill as a giveaway to the rich at the expense of everyone else. It's a narrative that's easy to understand and often resonates with voters. Beyond these specific criticisms, there's also the backdrop of ongoing tension within the Republican Party itself regarding tax and spend plans. While the party generally advocates for lower taxes, there are differing views on how to balance that with government spending and a ballooning national debt. This bill, with its significant tax cuts coupled with increased defense spending and a higher debt ceiling, seems to be walking right into that internal debate. It highlights the perennial push and pull between fiscal conservatism's different factions, and the compromises, or lack thereof, made in this legislation are sure to fuel those discussions further. Section 9, the final tally, what this rollercoaster ride means for you and Uncle Sam. So, after navigating this labyrinth of tax codes, new accounts, spending hikes, and silent treatments for major programs, what's the big takeaway? What does this bill, in its current House-passed form, really mean for the average American and for the nation's finances? Well, one of the most immediate and widely cited impacts is on the budget deficit. According to analysts, this bill is expected to increase the budget deficit by a rather eye-watering $600 billion in the next fiscal year alone. That's not chump change, that's we're going to need a bigger piggy bank money, and it raises serious questions about long-term fiscal sustainability. The bill paints a complex picture: tax cuts that disproportionately benefit higher earners, new savings incentives like Trump accounts for newborns and fitness HSAs, a new tax on remittances, and very specific support for Purple Heart veterans. Simultaneously, it ramps up defense spending, allocates funds for mass deportations, and makes notable changes to student loan programs and Pell Grant eligibility. And let's not forget the other bits, like the $500 million to modernize government with AI, while preventing states from regulating it or eliminating the registration fee and requirement for gun silencers. Oh, and a slew of new immigration fees for various services. It's a veritable smorgasbord of policy shifts. The broader implications are frankly enormous. For individuals, it could mean changes to your take-home pay, how you save for your children's future, how you pay for college, or even how much your gym membership effectively costs. For the country, it signals a continued path of significant government borrowing, a focus on certain domestic enforcement priorities, and a particular approach to economic stimulus heavily reliant on tax reductions. The exclusion of direct changes to Medicare and SNAP in this bill is a story in itself, leaving many to wonder about their future trajectory, even as other areas see dramatic reforms. Ultimately, this bill, having narrowly passed the House, now faces the crucible of the Senate, where its fate is far from certain. The debates will be fierce, the lobbying intense, and the final version, if it emerges, could look quite different. But what's clear is that the proposals on the table represent a significant vision for the country's direction. One with clear winners and potentially many who might feel left behind or burdened. As always, the devil is in the details, and the consequences will unfold in the paychecks, bank accounts, and daily lives of Americans for years to come. So, stay tuned, because this drama is far from over.